Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the podcast that I, your host, David Woodruff, lovingly call the Woodruff Report. We've got the College Football Playoff Championship. That's a mouthful. We've got that to talk about in this edition of the Woodruff Report. An incredible game. So good that we're really going to devote the entire podcast to it. I am talking today on a Sunday night. That is when I'm coming out with this podcast. There have been 4 playoff games played, NFL that is, but this is a show that belongs to Alabama, Georgia, because they deserved it. What a incredible game, and really a game that snuck up on you if you were watching it. That first half, you were thinking, this is going to be an okay game, but I'm not really excited for the second half. But then the second half really blew up and made it into what people will, of course, call an instant classic, whatever an instant classic is. But yeah, Alabama, Georgia. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of firsts with the college football playoff being instituted just a few years ago. But the first college football playoff final to ever go to an overtime, and so many news, but in the end, an old was the final result. Alabama, the Crimson Tide, win another national championship. They're second in 3 years, and Nick Saban gets his 5th national championship, just one off the legendary Paul (Bear) and Bryant. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. This edition of the Woodruff Report is starting in 3, 2, 1. 26-23 in favor of Alabama was the final score. But as all sports fans know, there is way more to a football game, or any game, really, more to it than just the final score. So let's get into it. Very first series of the game for Georgia. How will the true freshman Jake Fromm play on the biggest stage in all of college football? He's just a year removed from high school, starting against the vaunted Alabama defense led by Nick Saban, one of the most legendary coaches in history, and an interception on the third play of the game. He goes for this slot seam route. We'll talk about these slot seam routes later in the game, but it's sort of the receiver almost makes an incredible catch, bounces around, and the Alabama DBs, who, what a position group. If there's one position group that Nick Saban really is responsible for, it's the defensive backs, and he always has incredible defensive backs. I mean, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he's just the latest in the string of incredible Alabama defensive backs. But a great play made, and Alabama gets the ball. And we're thinking, is Alabama just going to shut down Georgia and crush them like they did Clemson in the semifinal? But sort of the theme of the first half, Alabama shaky on offense, especially Jalen Hurts. He misses some key passes to outstanding wideout Calvin Ridley, who, I mean, if you think about this, Calvin Ridley is consensus the top wide receiver in the nation. And yet, he's often a non-factor in Alabama games. And this is something that I'm sure Alabama fans, myself, I can't speak for them because I am not an Alabama fan, but I'm sure it must drive Alabama fans crazy. I mean, you've got this incredible wideout in Calvin Ridley, the best in the nation, and so much of the time he's just sort of irrelevant. He has maybe 2 or 3 catches. He doesn't really, the ball's not in his hands enough for him to take over a game and make a difference. But they miss a few passes to Ridley. On one of them, the defender falls down, and Jalen Hurts could literally just lob it up to Ridley in the end zone for a touchdown, but he misses him long. Hurts looks shaky. Jake Fromm looks like the more settled in of the 2 quarterbacks, and which is interesting because he's the one with less experience on the big stage in national title games. And so a shaky Alabama drive leads to a field goal, which is missed after a false start. It wasn't even close. And the kicking woes of Alabama were a big subject in this game. Of course, at the end of the game, there's the missed field goal by Papanastos that could have won the game. But think about, I was just thinking about this after the game. When is the last time Alabama has had a kicker that you could really just trust? Not even like above average incredible, just a kicker where you're like, okay, this is a 40-yard field goal, he's going to make this, and you're confident in that. Alabama has not really had a good kicker like that, and if there's one weakness that really has always been with these Alabama teams under Nick Saban, it's the kicking. So anyway, the kicker Papanastos, who's a transfer from Ole Miss, I believe he's a graduate transfer, don't quote me on this, completely misses the field goal. Momentum is back to Georgia. So Georgia gets the ball back and goes on this impressive long drive against this vaunted Alabama front. Now the linebacker position was a question mark for Alabama coming in. They're not as strong as they have been in the past. Names like Reuben Foster come to mind of these incredible Nick Saban defenses of past years, but the depth chart is thin. There have been so many injuries at that position for Alabama that this defense is sort of missing that star cerebral player in the middle. But still, the Alabama front is probably the best in the nation, maybe behind Clemson, but it's up there. You've got players like Daron Payne and Deshaun Hand who can just clog the middle. And the Georgia run game really didn't really get going at all in this game. And this problem was masked by the brilliance of Jake Fromm, but Nick Chubb and DeAndre Swift were non-factors in this game. The one back who did really make a difference for Georgia was Michel. Sony Michel is an incredible athlete, just big, fast, and it was really his speed that made him so effective for Georgia. Chubb was kind of that pound it between the tackles kind of back, but he didn't really have that game-breaking speed where one cut to the outside and he is going for 10 or 20. Chubb is more of that. He'll stick it in there. He'll drive his legs and get 4 or 5. And I mean, don't get me wrong. He's still an incredible back and he's strong and fast and stuff, but he doesn't have that like quickness and that just, okay, one cut and now I'm gone that Michel had. And Michel was really able to assert himself more than any other Georgia backs in this game. So this long, impressive Georgia drive culminates in a little read option it's actually sort of a direct snap to Harmon, the Georgia wideout. He fakes it inside to the running back and keeps it, and he's too quick for the Alabama defenders. He gets to the pylon. Touchdown Georgia. Georgia in front 7-0, and really, it was sort of a statement drive for Georgia. Okay, you've got a good defense. We don't care. We're going to drive. We're going to pound it. We're going to throw it, and we have to. We're going to stay on the field on third downs, and we don't care that this Alabama defense is supposed to be so good. We're just going to pound it, and when we get in the red zone, we're going to score touchdowns. We're not going to settle for field goals. That's what the Georgia drive was able to establish, and that was very important because it gave confidence to this offense and gave confidence to the fans who were at the game that this wasn't going to be a repeat of the Clemson game where Alabama just completely made the offense look like it wasn't ever going to get any yards ever. So we go into halftime with Georgia up, and the huge story of this game is that after halftime, Nick Saban pulls Jalen Hurts and puts in Tua Tagovailoa. And Tagovailoa is this true freshman lefty from Hawaii that we don't really know much about. We know he was a very highly ranked recruit. He won Elite 11, I believe, but I'm not completely positive. I know he was at the Elite 11 finals. I don't know if he won. But he's this incredibly highly ranked recruit, and he's played sparingly all season. He's sort of come in to mop up games where the Crimson Tide are just crushing people. So he hasn't really had a lot of valuable game time. But he is he can really throw the ball better than Jalen Hurts can. And that's not a knock on Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has done a fantastic job. He's a great player, but he still has some holes as a quarterback. He can't exactly read a defense too well. He doesn't have much accuracy and arm arm talent in general. He's more of an athlete playing the quarterback position. Tagovailoa is a quarterback playing the quarterback position, and that showed. He instantly made an impact to that Alabama offense. Suddenly, the ball is in the hands of these wide receivers, and throws aren't being missed, and the run game can get going because Georgia actually has to respect the pass game of Alabama. And with Tagovailoa, you don't actually lose that much quarterback mobility. I mean, on Tua's first drive, he makes this crazy third down conversion by midfield. He scrambles to his right, somehow evades like the entire Georgia defensive line twice, reverses field, and then gets like the 7 yards to convert on 3rd and 7. And it was just like, okay, maybe we're not actually losing that much quarterback mobility with Tagovailoa compared to Jalen Hurts. So basically what Nick Saban does is he puts in this quarterback that isn't as experienced and doesn't have the running ability, but is far better at throwing the ball, and it makes a huge difference. So obviously Nick Saban is going to be basically bowed down to as a god for making this decision because it worked. If Tagovailoa had gone in and done terribly, suddenly Nick Saban would be the worst coach ever in history. Why would you do that? That was the stupidest thing ever. But since Tagovailoa made such a difference and such an impact, of course, it reflects very positively on Nick Saban. This is a genius move. And it was. I mean, although it kind of annoys me that Nick Saban will get so much credit for this decision, where if it failed, he wouldn't. I still kind of respect the guts of Nick Saban for being able to go to his backup in the college football playoff championship and pulling a starter who has like 2 losses in 2 years as a starter. So important moments in the second half, there was actually Georgia blocked a punt that was called back for a questionable, and I mean questionable, offsides penalty. It looked like about the entire Alabama punt team jumped offsides, or false started, I should say. And then the Georgia defensive end, who actually ended up blocking the punt, seems like he reacts to like 3 or 4 Alabama guys moving, and he gets the call for offsides, which is really a backbreaker. And so that blocked punt does not count. And I believe that actually resulted in an Alabama first down, which kept a drive going. So a really rough call. And after that crazy third down conversion that I talked about by Tagovailoa, 3 or 4 plays later, that drive culminates in a deep in route for a touchdown. A few RPO slants later, it ended in a deep in route touchdown, Alabama. So then Georgia gets the ball back, and 80-yard touchdown to Harmon, who had an incredible game. Alabama blitzes just about everybody, and Georgia runs hitches on the outside with seam routes from the slot. And what's so great about that route is that since the go route is being run from the slot, the quarterback has a lot of room to put that ball into, as opposed to someone lining up on the numbers and running a go route where the quarterback, if he's lucky, gets to put it between the numbers and the sideline. When you run it from the slot, you've got almost half the field for the quarterback to throw the ball to, and he can just kind of throw it outside and let the wide receiver fade out and get it. And that's what Fromm does. Fromm played fantastic, and I could not believe he was a true freshman. I couldn't believe Tagovailoa was a true freshman. This was just a true freshman fiesta going on. 2 incredible quarterbacks who are going to be very, very, very successful in their college careers. Anyway, Fromm puts in a Dilfer dime, and the rest is up to Harmon. Harmon breaks an ankle tackle, goes 80 yards for the touchdown. Momentum back to Georgia. That play was actually almost called back for a sideline interference on Kirby Smart and the Georgia sideline, who were just going nuts. They were so happy. And he almost steps out of bounds, but he's able to control his body just enough to stay in bounds. Then Alabama gets the ball, and they run this very, very weird play. It's like a sprint out, so Tagovailoa gets it, and he rolls to his left, and everyone seems to be blocking, like they don't know it's a pass play. But Tagovailoa thinks it's a pass play, so he throws kind of this weak thing, and it's intercepted by Georgia. Wow. Talk about momentum really being in the hands of the Bulldogs now. total miscommunication, and really one of the only times where Tagovailoa showed his inexperience under center. In that situation, if all the helmets are turned away from you downfield, you've got to throw that ball or just run and try to get a few yards yourself. You can't throw this sort of duck into a bunch of people and hope it turns out for the best, because interceptions are especially costly in these huge games. But the next play, Fromm throws an interception. So Deshaun Hand comes in and disrupts the play. Fromm tries to dump it off to Michel, but Michel, because the pressure had got to Fromm so early, wasn't exactly paying attention and ready for the ball. It hits him in the head, bounces up off the hard helmet surface, and one of those big defensive linemen for Alabama grabs it. His name was Davis. Don't know his first name. But he grabs it. So Tagovailoa, you're the luckiest man in the state of Georgia. That interception didn't prove to be super costly. So Alabama driving and a sack on third down leads to a field goal. So the field goal is good. Papanastas makes it to get it to 20-10. So now Georgia gets the ball, goes on a drive, and then the drive, which doesn't end in points, culminates in this very weird fake punt where Georgia puts in their third string QB to do like a pooch kick kind of thing, and it's nearly blocked. And if that had been blocked, Kirby Smart would have been crucified, because like, what are you doing? Put your punter in, pin him back, instead of doing this weird trickeration thing where it looked like kind of an option. The quarterback could either throw the fake punt or just pooch kick it, but it looked really awkward and weird, and it was almost blocked. But the fourth quarter belonged to Alabama, and Najee Harris, another Alabama true freshman, comes in the fourth quarter, and he really gets the running game going. Bo Scarborough and Damian Harris didn't really get much going the whole night. But this kid Najee, the number one recruit of last year's football class, comes in and instantly makes a difference. He's getting these chunk plays, 7-8 yards, and suddenly Georgia has to respect this run game, and it opens everything up. So Alabama's driving, and Tagovailoa throws this crazy pass that should have been intercepted in the back of the end zone by Sanders. By the way, this is just a completely unrelated thought, but why is there a pylon in the back of the end zone? So there's obviously a pylon where the goal line meets the sideline, and then in the back of the end zone on all four corners. But then there's also pylons kind of in like the back kind of left of the end zone. There's just this random pylon sitting there. I don't know if maybe it's like pylon cam, like another view for cameras, but it's just weird. There's like this lonely little solitary pylon just sitting in the back of the end zone, and I'm looking at it going, why do you exist? Anyway, should have been another interception by Tagovailoa, and then their field goal is good to make it 20-13. Alabama shuts down Georgia again, and they're driving, and they're aided by a questionable pass interference called. Were the feet tangled, or was there contact? The officials say pass interference, and on 4th down and 7, Tagovailoa connects with Calvin Ridley for a touchdown with 3:49 left. Was he even trying to throw it to Ridley? I personally don't think so, but sometimes it's sort of like beginner's luck, I guess, for Tagovailoa. First championship, okay, the college football gods will give you one here or there. Plus, the college football gods want a good game, so why not tie the game up? So the game is tied with 3:49 left, and this brings up the eternal question, do you go for two? Nick Saban decides not to. I guess he assumes that his team is sort of gathering the momentum and have the upper hand. So they don't go for two. The game is tied. Georgia gets the ball back, unable to do anything with it. And so Tagovailoa gets the ball back with a chance to lead Alabama down in the college football playoff and win a championship. So he on a third down, this was on the previous Georgia drive. the announcers were talking about how Jake Fromm has really never been uncomfortable in his life. Of course, announcers jinx on third down, a high throw to the running back in the flat. Tagovailoa gets the ball back with a chance to be the hero. On a third down, they run a QB lead off to the left, and the announcers are talking about how Tagovailoa shows his power splitting through a bunch of Georgia players. I found this ironic because literally he just lowered his head. This is exactly this is how CTE happens. This is CTE Central. What Tagovailoa did was CTE Central, yet he's applauded for being physical. And I think this is just got to stop myself before I go off on a tangent, but this is just one reason why head injuries are so common in the NFL, because plays like this are applauded when you lower the crown of your helmet and fight for extra yards. And I mean, Tagovailoa was smart to do it. When you lower the crown of your helmet at a defender, I know from experience it's almost impossible to drive that player back. That player is going to fall forward because I mean, his helmet is just going into your stomach as the tackler. So anyway, CTE Central, but he converts on third down, and it gives Papanastis the chance to win the game for Alabama, and worst field goal ever. His plant foot slips, and he misses it by about the state of Alabama to the left. It's not even close. I don't even know if it hit the All-State net behind the goalpost. That's how bad the kick was. So choke from Papanastis again goes back to the Alabama kicking problems that they've always had. The pressure really got to him. So we're going to OT for the first time in college football playoff history. Alabama wins the toss, and they, of course, will get the ball second, so they know what they need to do. Georgia, having just played Oklahoma and won in overtime in the semifinal, has experience in college football playoff overtime. And another thing is the game is being played in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, the home of the Atlanta Falcons, which is in Georgia. So the announcers were talking about it, and they were talking about how the stadium was about 60-40 in favor of Georgia. So there are more Georgia fans in the stadium. So it's sort of Alabama knows what they need to do, and so they're favored there, but Georgia is favored because the stadium is 60-40 to them, and they have experience. So Georgia gets the ball, and they cannot do anything with it. In fact, they move backwards, sacked on third down, but the legend himself, Rodrigo Blankenship, love that man, Goggle Boy, he is just a king. Hits the 51-yarder with all the pressure on him, doesn't even look phased. He just walks away. What a legend this Blankenship dude is. He's wearing these goofy goggles. Everyone's probably counted him out his entire athletic career. And he says, Alabama college football playoff? Unfazed. And he drills it. This was never even a question. That baby was in the geometric center of the uprights. Rodrigo hits it. 23-20 Georgia. They need a stop. And a sack on first down. Tagovailoa tries to make an incredible play, and he shows his inexperience. He keeps moving backwards and backwards and backwards until he's sacked. Nick Saban's going crazy. What is going on? But Tagovailoa is calm. The announcers were talking about how he doesn't know any better. He doesn't know what a terrible situation he's in. That's a bunch of baloney. He knows that he's in trouble, but he says, okay. What do good quarterbacks do? They flush the previous play and say, okay, next play. Next play, touchdown. Georgia runs a cover 2, and he hits the vertical on the left side, keeps that safety in the middle, and throws the deep route. Alabama are kings of college football, 26-23. Incredible, incredible game. So what were my takeaways from this game? I have two that I think are very important. One is the youth factor. Both teams had true freshmen running everywhere. Najee Harris, Tua Tagovailoa for Alabama, Jake Fromm, and the wide receivers for Georgia. So both these teams have longevity. They're going to be back, maybe not in the championship, but at least competing at a high level in the SEC. The other main takeaway that I had from this game was it was really the year of the RPO. RPO stands for run pass option, and it's a new kind of offensive ideology where the quarterback makes the decision during the play whether he wants to run or throw, depending on what the linebackers or whoever he's reading does. For example, there's a player running a slant on the outside. The quarterback runs basically what looks like a read option, and he'll pull it and throw it if he sees something from the defense. And this play is so difficult to stop because the offensive line is able to just run block, even when the quarterback throws it, and the officials rarely call it because it's kind of this zone. It's sort of this gray area of the rules. Technically, it should be illegal man downfield. But if the quarterback decides to hand it off and not throw it, it's not a penalty. So the officials are kind of put in this bind, and it's so hard to defend as a defense because you have to, as a linebacker, you have to react to these offensive linemen who are run blocking. But if you commit to the run, the quarterback's just going to pull it and throw it over your head. So there's not much you can really do. It's a lethal scheme that both teams ran very effectively throughout this game. So youth and the year of the RPO were really the stories of this game. And especially when Tagovailoa went in, this was sort of the bread and butter for Alabama. That like fake inside, that sort of read option between Tagovailoa and Najee Harris or some other back with the option to throw it to Ridley on the slant or another wide receiver. And that's really how they just started torching this very good Georgia defense. So Alabama are kings of college football again after beating Georgia 26-23. Congratulations to the Crimson Tide on another job well done. Now, I would like to say that just because Alabama won the championship does not necessarily mean that they are the best team in the land. Remember, they sort of got into the college football playoff on reputation and the skin of their teeth. Ohio State could very easily have been in their place. And what the college football playoff has done is really, it sort of decides you have to be hot at the right time. Like, sort of an extreme example are the NHL playoffs. The team that wins the Stanley Cup is often not really the best team in the National Hockey League. It's the team that gets hot around playoff time. And Alabama was hot around playoff time, just in football. So I don't know if Alabama is necessarily the best team in the land. Obviously, they could give anybody a run for their money. But they were able to win, and you got to respect them for it. So Alabama are kings of the college football world again, but Georgia is not going anywhere. They've got a lot of young talent. So that's what I wanted to talk about on this edition of the Woodruff Report. I will be coming out with another episode shortly on the NFC and AFC divisional round, along with AFC and NFC championship predictions and analysis. So that's what's coming up soon. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you'll tune in next time. This is your host, David Woodruff, saying so long, and thanks for listening, to the Woodruff Report.